Welcome to OBG Talk, a new collaboration between K24 Inside Business and Oxford Business Group that asks the country's key decision makers and stakeholders about the opportunities and challenges of investing in Kenya. My name is Robert Tashima, the Africa Managing Editor for Oxford Business Group, and thank you for joining us. For more than 20 years, OBG has conducted on-the-ground, in-country research on emerging markets, including some of the biggest global players: South Africa, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Mexico. And as East Africa's biggest economy and one of the most dynamic on the continent, Kenya naturally fits into this portfolio. But how can Kenya realize its potential? What role do private investors play in that regard? And what does it all mean for the average citizen? Those are the questions that we will be exploring today in OBG Talk. Today's episode will focus on the power sector. Kenya's overall electrification rates are low and access to power is a problem, but the country has some ambitious plans to address those issues, and more importantly, it benefits from some unique advantages that will help it in the long term. To delve further into that, we have with us today Ben Chumo, the Managing Director and CEO of Kenya Power and Lighting Company. With 30 years of experience at Kenya Power at all different levels, Ben is, well, he's a veritable institution in and of himself, and thus is well placed to talk about the potential opportunities for foreign investors in the power sector, as well as the sizable challenges that must be addressed. Now, the hurdles that Kenya faces are not unique. I recently was in Lagos, a global urban city of anywhere between 13 million and 20 million people, depending on who is counting, but which produces less grid electricity than a medium-sized European city, and where diesel costs can add up to 30% more to operating overheads. But Kenya nonetheless offers some unique opportunities, given both its geothermal sources and its liberalized regulatory framework. So to help us explore this further, Ben, I'd like to start off by asking about access to electricity. Now, as I mentioned, Kenya's electrification rate is lower in some cases than many other major markets on the continent. What progress is being made on addressing that issue of last-mile connectivity, and what more can be done to help electrify Kenya's rural areas?
Thank you very much, Robert. And first and foremost, I want to appreciate this opportunity, K24, for having us here. And to respond to the question, where we have come from and where we are really demonstrates that we are moving faster than all of other countries in terms of connectivity, in terms of access. And I want to say this at this early stage that a discussion like this cannot be complete without setting the context within which you should be able to discuss the content in specific terms. And I would like us to so that we can have adequate space to measure our performance, I want to set the context to be between 2013 upwards, so that you can see the speed with which we have connected, rather enhanced access. In 2013, we had 27% access, universal access, across the country.
Right.
We are now talking about 54% access.
Okay.
In 2013, we had 2.2 million households connected to the grid. We are now, as we speak today, we have 4.4 million households. And to give you a rough estimate of what that means is that every household has 5.5 people, according to the current statistics from the Bureau of Statistics. So we are talking about over 50% of Kenyans having access to electricity at the moment. And that's a tremendous speed. If you look at the average connection rate per day at the moment, yesterday we connected over 5,000 households.
Yesterday alone?
Yesterday alone.
Okay.
We monitor this almost on daily basis. We strongly believe that what gets measured gets done. And so when you monitor performance on daily basis, people want to put their best. Human beings like to put their best a lot of times. And so we want to say this, that in terms of access, we are doing pretty well as Kenya. I know the countries you could perhaps be comparing us with include, among others, Egypt, which has done 90%. But I want to, if you look at the land tenure in Egypt, a lot of people live in villages along the Nile, generally. And so whatever service you want to offer to such population is easy to do. If you deliver a power line, everybody gets connected. If you deliver a sewer line, everybody gets connected. A road, name it, you know, a telecom service, everybody gets, because of the land tenure. Robert, you may not know this, but you know, in Kenya, we have some land tenure that is slightly different from everybody lives in their own parcel of land, and in some institutions, some places, we still have Kenyans whose driveway could be as long as 12 kilometers to drive to a home. And so connecting such sparsely populated, or rather sparsely sparse homestays all over the country gives us a challenge. So to get to make it easier in future, we might consider living in one place and farming in another place so that you can be able to enhance connectivity. But otherwise, we are doing extremely well in terms of connectivity. And appreciating the challenges that could have led to this low connectivity rate in the past, which is actually the cost of connectivity. When the current government came into office in 2013, they mutually together with the sector players discussed the best way to enhance access. And after a lot of consultations, together with the World Bank and other donor community members, it was the last mile project was mooted and agreed. The last mile project was mooted as an idea. It is now a program as we speak. And we already have launched, among the 47 counties, we have launched in 3 of them. And the program is going on. The last mile project is going to be a revolutionary project.
And what are the targets, the objectives for the last mile project?
The first objective of last mile project is to enhance access, to achieve universal access by 2020. As I've said before, we are now doing 54% this year, or rather as current statistics. The objective of the government together with the sector players is to move access to 70% by 2017 and to achieve universal access by 2020. At this rate, we could easily deliver it before 2020. And I'm almost certain that with the kind of support we are receiving from everybody, government, donor community, you know, employee community of Kenya, business people, we should be able to achieve universal access earlier than intended before 2020.
Excellent.
And to demonstrate further in terms of support, this project is being implemented by KPLC. And what the government has done is to borrow concessionary loans from African Development Bank, the World Bank, and other donor agencies to be able to on-grant those resources to KPLC to implement the project. And the way the project is designed is that KPLC has an already existing infrastructure across the country with appropriate installed transformers, substations, etc., lines. And what the government is doing with this first mile is that we are going to take advantage of existing transformers to maximize on them. For example, you find a transformer, one transformer may be connected to 2 households. The potential may be 10. So this last mile is going to connect the balance of 8 to be able to maximize on that particular installation, to be able to enhance access. And we have earmarked, for the first phase, we have earmarked 5,320 transformers, identified already for that purpose. And it will be connecting, all those transformers will be connecting 312,000 households to the grid. And so, and that means in a short while, we shall be doing, under this particular project, we shall be connecting 1.5 million Kenyans. Because every household has about 5.5 people. So that really, and the primary objective is reduction of cost of connectivity. We have 2 levels of cost here. When you talk about cost of consumption in terms of tariffs, that's a separate matter. But you're talking about connectivity charges. What the government has done is that for a very, very long time, we have charged people the actual cost of connecting to the grid. It means we charge you materials, labor, and transport. As a customer, you pay the total cost. And up to about 2014, thereabout, we've been charging our customers 35,000 shillings. The government has subsidized that to now 15.
Okay.
So Kenyans would be contributing. We don't even want to call it a charge,
right.
a contribution.
Right.
You know, of 15,000 shillings to get connected. And so that reduction will make everybody in the country be able to access the grid or grid power, and that is really what we consider as a revolution in the economy.
Now that also brings up a certain quandary of its own too. It's obviously very important in terms of maintaining these electrification rates and the improvements in the electrification rates to have affordable access to electricity. But at the same time, Kenya is obviously pushing right now quite hard to incentivize private sector involvement in the power sector, particularly on the generating side. So where do you feel the balance needs to be struck in terms of tariffs to not only ensure that they are affordable and accessible to the average Kenyan, but also attractive for private investors to invest in new projects?
Very true, Robert, and it's a very, very interesting balance, because what we now have, we've come up from, in 2013 we had 1,700 megawatts installed capacity. We are now doing 2,341 megawatts, and an improvement of about over 660 megawatts in 3 years, below 3 years actually.
Yeah.
And that is tremendous. In the past, we used to do 30 megawatts for 3 years and stuff like that. And so what we have now is a major improvement. And what of these 41 megawatts, 50% of the dispatch is now geothermal, which is fairly the cheapest. We are actually proud to be, I think, number 1 or number 2 geothermal destinations in the world.
Right.
And so 50% is geothermal, about 6% is hydro, and about between 11 and 12% of the dispatch now is thermal, the most expensive sources. And so the balance that we must achieve looking at where we are in terms of generation, this country would require, going forward, some investors to invest in cheaper sources of generation. What that means, Robert, is that they must return their investments to be able to improve generation to cover the demand in the country. And therefore, the tariff must be considered in such a way that they must make a return. At the same time, and that's the balance that we must consider all the time, at the same time, investors in other sectors of the economy, manufacturers, for example, would like to see a reduction in the cost of electricity. Right. And these are the two interests.
It's a tricky balance.
Precisely, that we must consider. And we have a regulator who's really been in the sector for a fairly long time. And I think we have been able to strike a balance. If you look at the reduction in terms of tariffs since 2013, because of the injection of geothermal, which as I've said, is now being dispatched at 50% of the entire dispatch of energy, we have been able to reduce the cost through the displacement of thermal expensive energy. And the fuel cost charge has come down from 7 shillings 22 cents to 2 shillings 31 cents as we speak today. Which primarily means that we are cheaper by about 68%. You know, and the tariffs, in terms of industrial tariffs, has come down from 19 US cents to 11 US cents. That's for the industrialists, that you know, the people who drive the economy. And the domestic consumers' tariff also has come down from 21 US cents to 13 US cents. So on the average, the tariff has come down from about 20 to 14.
Significant change.
Fairly, very significant change.
Excellent.
And so what we now need to look at is how that particular reduction should translate into cost of products, you know, for ordinary Kenyans, so that then, you know, the ordinary Kenyans should be able to benefit from this reduction. And that is a discussion for another day.
Exactly. But that's very much the starting point, isn't it? Great. Well, thanks so much, Ben. It's been really helpful having a conversation with you and getting to hear from certainly somebody who's very involved in what's going on and very central to what's going on, the sort of challenges that Kenya faces in terms of increasing access and in terms of meeting those targets for electrification under the Last Mile project, but also more importantly, the momentum that is building in Kenya. We've heard that over the past 3 years, electrification rates of access have nearly doubled. We've heard that tariffs have dropped significantly. So from what it sounds like, Ben, if the momentum keeps up in this regard, then Kenya will certainly be very well placed, certainly before the 2020 deadline of the Last Mile project.
Indeed.
Well, thanks again, Ben. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you to the viewers for joining us for OBG Talk.
Thank you, Robert.